I knew at that point that this sugar thing was a problem, right? And that once I knew that, then the results started kicking it. So it wasn't the amount of time that I was in the gym. It wasn't the amount of miles that I was running. That was really that moment. And I think, like you said, it's pervasive in society that it's your fault, Yeah, no, just keep on. It's got to be you. You just got to. You're not working hard enough. You're not doing this, and it's like, well, yeah, but you're hitting the wrong nail.
I'm your host, Kim Hines, and welcome to the Emotional Eats podcast. I'm on a mission to show you that what you consume, not just the food, affects your entire life. Midlife is different. Let's dig into the real reasons why you eat when you're not hungry and why you're not feeling well. My guests and I are going to give you doable solutions and help you let go of perfectionism, food rules, and stress to make changes that will last a lifetime. If you're ready to ditch old school diet culture and nourish your entire life, this is the show for you. Do you feel like you're addicted to sugar? Or are you feeling like the amount of sugar that you're eating is affecting your health? Then welcome to episode 7 and meet Coach Omar. Omar Cumberbatch is a health coach, a podcast host, and self-proclaimed reformed sugar addict. Omar shares his story about his relationship with sugar and how he kicked the habit and why. And we talk about hitting the right things for your body to make the changes you want to make. It's not always what you think based on what you hear in the world about diet and exercise. We talk about the effects that sugar has on our bodies, and we also talk about where it hides in our food. We share about different personality types when it comes to making healthy changes and giving up sugar. Some people can give up sugar, have it once in a while without overdoing it. And other people, like us, are all or nothing with sugar and making changes in our habits. If you've been thinking about cutting down on sugar, Omar has a 5-day sugar challenge. So go ahead and check that out in the show notes and make sure to follow Omar at coachomar.hca on Instagram. Enjoy the episode. Hey, Omar, thanks for being here.
Oh, pleasure. Thank you for having me.
I appreciate you being here. We have been friends for a long time, and you wear a lot of hats. So in addition to having a couple podcasts, you are also a health coach. And I think I'm going to tap in today to your health practitioner and health side. How's that sound?
Sounds great.
Awesome. Well, let's start for the listeners. Let's talk about your background. And I'd love to know more about growing up, your thoughts about health, and kind of how that led you to becoming a health coach and going to school for that.
Oh, yeah. No, thank you for the opportunity to share. So I've always considered myself an athlete, right? I don't think I was anything stellar by any stretch of the imagination. I wasn't getting scholarships or anything like that, but I was always active, loved basketball, football, baseball. I wanted to, played on a couple of teams at, the high school level. And I really just loved athletics. I ran around all day. That was my thing. So one of the things that I noticed as I got a little older into my 20s and 30s, I didn't necessarily give up the drive to compete and play and be out there, but I just was not in the type of shape that you'd figure for someone who spent that much time working out, being at the gym, and running 4 or 5 miles a day. And I was just basically following whatever the dogmatic advice out there around nutrition was at the time. So I always thought like, okay, I'm not getting these results. And that's one of my things that I think is a benefit and a negative is that I definitely had this ability to figure that I can just like outwork things. So if I wasn't getting the results in the gym and I was in there for an hour, I'll be like, okay, well, I guess I have to work another hour and a half or something like that. Or if I was running 4 miles a day, I was like, okay, maybe I have to take it up to 5. So I really just had this idea that, yeah, I'm the right path and I just have to work a little harder. And one day I was just kind of doing my thing on YouTube back in the day. So you talk like 15 years ago. So you had a lot of different characters on YouTube, but I was very, I don't want to say gullible, because if you tell me something and it makes like sense in my head, I'll give it a shot. I'm very open to things like that. And I was going down this rabbit hole, and I stumbled upon somebody who was just talking about sugar. And at the time I was trying a vegetarian diet, and everyone was swearing up and down about vegetarianism and the benefits and such. And the guy was talking about the role of sugar in your life. And I'm listening to him, and he's like, all right, this is making sense again, like that, curiosity is still bubbling over. And then I just took a step back, and I saw, just for breakfast, I was having about 50 to 60 grams of sugar just for breakfast. So my breakfast, and again, I'm very obsessive compulsive by nature, and I guess we'll probably get into that a little bit in the show. Every day I would have Dunkin' Donuts, hazelnut coffee with milk and 3 sugars. So, and they pile on the sugar, and then I had a banana. So that was my breakfast. So then I did the math. That was like, depending on the scoop, it was probably 50 to 60 grams of sugar just at breakfast, right? And then my snacks would be anything that was low fat. So now that I know, after all the studying that I've done over the years, the food manufacturers are very smart, that they know that the only taste that you really get is through fat and sugar. So if there's no fat in something, there's a ton of sugar, and vice versa. And that was my thing. And then I just noticed at that point, let me try to cut back on the sugar. And then I went on a deep dive to reduce my sugar intake. And Kim, when I tell you, the weight was falling off like crazy. And to the point where when I was going to work, people would like pull me to the side and ask me if I was actually sick. And I'm like, no, I just cut out sugar. And they're like, sure, man, you lost a lot of weight quick. And I'm like, I know you're not going to believe it, but this was it. So I was so fascinated by just making this simple, not easy switch, that I got to learn more. What else can I do in my life? What else can I find out that I could just change that's going to have these profound results? So then I went to IIN, and I decided to be a health coach. And then at that point, then I started podcasting and just trying to get messages out, a little bit about that story, and just providing information to people, just providing a space where they can learn. And maybe this doesn't work for them, but this might. So just to keep on continuing that journey of discovery, and you'll find something that's going to fit to match your health desires. That's always been my philosophy.
That is amazing. And we're going to do a little deep dive on this.
Okay.
You just dropped so many nuggets of information. And I kind of want to go back to the working out excessively, because in our society, we believe that more is more. So when you're going to do something, if it's not working, just step it up. And women are taught, and men, but working with women, we're taught that if you are not losing weight at 1,500 calories, then drop to 1,200. We're taught that if you're on the Peloton bike for 20 minutes, then you need to be on for an hour. So it's interesting that you went through that too. And how did you, let's start with that. How did you break the cycle of just adding more and more and more? Because our bodies can only handle so much.
Yeah, great point. I guess it was that nugget of knowledge, right? I just didn't have the knowledge that I wanted to or had to get the results, right? So it wasn't the amount of time. That was like the eureka moment, right? It's like I didn't change anything at that moment, except one thing was to just, I knew at that point that this sugar thing was a problem, right? And that once I knew that, then the results started kicking it. So it wasn't the amount of time that I was in the gym. It wasn't the amount of miles that I was running. That was really that moment. And I think, like you said, it's pervasive in society that it's your fault, Yeah, no, just keep on. It's got to be you. You just got to. You're not working hard enough. You're not doing this, and it's like, well, yeah, but you're hitting the wrong nail, right? Like you're beating something into the ground that it has nothing to do with the results that you desire, right? And that was kind of that moment. And again, like, there's nobody out there who is doing the amount of work that you think will get you the results. Like, you literally, like you said, you can't keep diving your calorie intake south and expect to be healthy. It just doesn't make any sense when you step back from it. But again, you're absolutely right. It's pervasive. Everybody tells you it's like, basically, it's your fault. You're not doing enough. You got to do more. And no matter which way of the scale, be it at the gym or how much food that you take in. And then once you start getting the knowledge, and because that's a loud noise outside, right? So once you start getting knowledge, start really understanding a little bit more about your body and what actually is to be like healthy, you realize it in essence is effortless to the extent once you're just not going to do the same things going forward. So I hope that answers your question.
Absolutely. So one of the big things you just said is it's not your fault. We think it's our fault because we're just not working hard enough. We don't have willpower. We don't have discipline.
Yeah.
And the exercise part of it, I think because of being online so much, we really put exercise is important. Walking is important. Lifting is important. All the things are important, but we put so much stock in out exercising our diet also.
Yes.
And I also love that you said we're hitting the wrong nail, because we look at everything, and we can get into this later too, but we're looking at exercise and the food right now, but there's stress and there's sleep and there's all these nails that we have to hit. It's like spinning plates, doing all the things. So absolutely. I love that. I think that's really important. And I appreciate that you brought that up. And I'm going to bring you down the vegetarian path again. And this is not to judge anyone. All of our listeners, you do what's right for you. But that's what I want to ask you is, we go down these paths and you hear, this is the right one for you. This is the right one. Everybody should do this cookie cutter situation. How did you figure out that vegetarian may or may not work for you when you started to do that? Did you have any reaction in your body? Did you change in your body weight? How did that react with you?
Yeah, no, it's very interesting that you said that. And I admit that I probably was a terrible vegetarian. Like, let me just start with that. Like, I'm not giving up on it completely. I'm not a vegetarian at this moment. I'm more definitely in the low carb sphere, just healthy eating in general. But I'm not a carbophobe or anything like that either. I've definitely grown up and felt more comfortable in my diet as I've just had some time to sit with a variety of them. But I just didn't feel anything fantastic in comparison to what was described to me. Like, I was supposed to be running through walls. I was supposed to have all this energy. I was supposed to lose all this weight, and none of that happened. So it wasn't a thing. So I was like, okay. But like, granted, I don't think I was a proper vegetarian in the context. I was just like, okay, if it doesn't have meat, I'll eat it, kind of thing. And that's just an ignorant approach that I had at the time because I just didn't have the knowledge either. So, but to your point, I was not feeling anything that would say, okay, I just have to stick with this diet. And when I at that point, peeling back that onion and really eliminating the sugar part of it, that's when I started seeing profound results. So then I started patterning my diet to having as little sugar in my diet as possible. And that's really been why I think my diet has evolved into something along that lines from that day forward, because I knew the sugar was my thing. So I kind of identified that more than being a vegetarian, subscribing to a paleo diet or keto diet or intermittent fasting, all those kinds of different things. That was, I discovered, was my main issue. and that had the most effect on my body. So that's really what was going on at that particular time and has led me to today.
That's really powerful because I think it goes back again to that bio individuality that we learned in
Mhm.
our nutritional health coaching school, is that everyone has the thing that they need to work on. Everyone has a different plan that works for them. And everyone has something different that they'll stick to, because I think that's the hard part, is sticking to it. And I'll tell you something really interesting, that when I look at blood work, not a medical person, so I'm not looking at it from a medical side, but when I look at blood work with other people and my own, we look at, we know certain things about animal products, but
Mhm.
even when I was more plant-based, my cholesterol and my triglycerides were up and elevated with the more processed food and sugar that I ate, not the animal products. So, and other people find that too sometimes. So it's really interesting to me, the effect that sugar and processed food, and I say processed food, but it's packed with sugar. So, and we can
Right.
talk about that. But I'm curious too, you were, like you said, very kind of obsessive about this. With being able to go through and quit the sugar, did you find you could do it the first time? Did you find you kind of fell a little bit? What was your process to go through that? Because in a way, when you're black or white about it, if we fall off, we have certain feelings about ourselves when we fall off. So can you speak to that?
Yeah, I think this is a huge topic and a great question because I think a lot of people are daunted by the idea of, say, eliminating sugar more than probably anything else. I mean, I think maybe cheese and dairy might be like a close second. Some people like their bread, so but sugar is definitely that thing where it's like, wow, there's no way when you like sugary things, it's just in your mind. There's just no way that you're able to do it. So I think my process was that I had a little bit of a cheat kind of thing, and I'll walk you through it and just see if this makes any sense to you. I've discovered, like I say, sugar itself is obviously the issue, but sweetness not necessarily, right? So there were certain things that I was trying to recognize in my diet. Like, remember I was saying the Dunkin' Donuts coffee with 3 sugars. I found that stevia, after research, was a very natural sugar substitute. It's from a plant. It's just a they call it the sweet plant. It's when you get a quality brand, it doesn't have any effect on your blood sugar. So I was able to substitute my coffee sugar with stevia. I cut the banana out. I love breakfast, right? So I love eggs. I love like things that, it didn't have to be a fruit. So that was one of the things, especially in the beginning, just kind of weed me off. I was able to do. So I basically went from 60 grams plus the sugar or whatever to 0 just by that one substitution. Then the rest of the day, the snacking, I just kind of cut back on the snacking and picked other snacks because I would say, okay, Skittles was a snack for me, right? So just so the audience gets a picture, because again, it has no fat, right? So I was like, and that's sad. The alternative was a ton of sugar, so I just stopped with that. And then something weird happened after around 2 weeks, like, and this is what I tell people all the time, like to at least give them some hope and some comfort that change is really, really possible and profound in a short amount of time. Your taste buds actually change. And I know for someone who loves ice cream, Skittles, candy, all that soda, forget, I could go on for days about my soda addictions, but you just change. It's amazing. Your taste buds start to radically change, and things that you thought were sweet are like disgustingly sweet. It's like overbearingly sweet. And once you start to weed yourself off of it, and then look at it, the turnaround time is relatively quick. You can't even enjoy those things anymore. And I know this sounds absolutely crazy for someone on the other side, but trust me, like I was that dude who had to graduate from Coke to Pepsi because Coke was not sweet enough for me at some point. Like that's how I was. So I was going down to a direction that for me to even say this is blasphemous, but that was what was going on for me. And to see like, wow, I can't drink a Coke today. It's just I tried. I've gone to the movies and I said, oh, let me get a Coke and see how this works. And it's just I can't even drink it. And that was something I would never have imagined in a bazillion years at that point. So I think that was my process. And ultimately, I think it really depends on how quickly you want to do that. Give yourself some grace and patience with it, because I know some people who I've worked with just cut the cord. I'm not doing stevia. I'm not doing anything. I'll drink coffee black. Forget it. I'll just do it. That some people have that ability. I needed to wean myself off of it a little bit. And that was my approach. And I think it really just has to do with what you're tolerable with, and like what can prove that you can do these results for long term. And whatever way to get there, that's the way that you get there. But I mean, that was my journey specifically.
I think that's great for you. I'm glad that that worked out. And I also love that you just said your taste buds change, because they really do. Think about from being a child.
Mm-hmm.
Now, maybe you didn't like a certain vegetable and now you can have that. That was me with Brussels sprouts and
Oh,
asparagus. And
me too.
so, yeah, we change over time, and we can actually, the interesting thing is we can program that, right?
Yeah.
And our gut is also very programmable. And unfortunately, not just the taste buds, because I am with you. I am a chocoholic, and I'll go for quite a while, and I just don't even think about it. I don't need to sweeten anything, and fruit tastes really sweet to me. However, as soon as I have it again and I taste it, it starts up the whole cycle again. And I think part of it too is we all know that sugar gives us that dopamine hit also.
Mm-hmm.
It gives us that happy. And so did sugar for you at any time also not only just give you that sweet, and it was kind of not even something you were aware of that you were having so much of? Do you think that also gave you something emotionally?
I'm absolutely sure of it. I don't think at the time I even understood what any of this means. Like, to be honest, we joked about it off air. It's like, my podcast, this podcast, Birds Fat, like has opened me up to so many different things that I had no idea was going on, including that, right? So we have a lot of guests who are into intuitive eating space, and it just I didn't realize how much of that reward center was being turned on just by that. And I'm still struggling, I guess, to find the genesis of that. So I always try to look back like childhood, and I don't remember necessarily being like a candy kid or anything like that. I really don't, but there had to be something there, because like it's insane how addictive I was, or just the amount of consumption I've had over the years for really no reason, right? Like, and again, I guess as I got older, it wasn't as easy to keep the weight off, and it was just more noticeable because I was less active. But there was definitely a healthy amount of um I want to say I don't. I keep. I know that they don't like to say the word addiction a lot in this sugar world. I don't know if you've stumbled upon that, but there was something that's underlying that I just never was able to uncover emotionally until like now. It's like kind of creeping into my understanding of it. But yeah, there was definitely some there, Kim, no doubt about it.
That's what I wonder about too, is are we addicted to the actual sugar? If we use that word, and we know we're using that in a different sense than someone who's really struggling with substance abuse, but there's a similar light up in our brain. We know that I
Right, right.
believe we're really addicted to the feeling that we get,
Mhm.
because the things that we go to when we're really feeling low, and when we work with emotional eating with people who really binge, they go for the sugar, fat, and salt.
Yeah.
And that brings me back to you talking about we went through a phase in our world where low fat, and you've talked about that. When we take the fat out of food, we have to have something for the taste, which is the sugar. And I'd love for you to share your thoughts on, we have a lot of marketing of products, and our companies are able to make food feel like you just can't stop at one. It make you feel like you have to keep buying it and keep eating it. So how do you feel about how much food is adding in this sugar, because that's what's making us come back for it? Are you finding that that's a hard thing for people to transition from and understand what's going on with their food? And then what would you recommend for people to kind of transfer over and maybe have something else?
Oh, that's a great question, and that's a rabbit hole in itself, right? Because the food manufacturers are very much aware of what they want us to feel about their foods, so that we keep buying their food. So there's no debate about that. I think just you acknowledging that, people make now a little bit more aware, if they haven't been already, about just that fact. Also, one of the things that really is disturbing, and I harp on this, and I hope that people don't get too offended by the rabbit hole that this goes down. It's like these things are hidden from you, right? So I think the last list that I compiled was, I think there's over 70 names for sugar. So it's not just, you think you're looking at a label and it's, oh, this doesn't have any sugar in it, right? And they name it literally like 70 different things, and the list is insane. Like, he was like, that's sugar, really? Like, I wouldn't even imagine that that was the case. So yeah, the manufacturers are in on this, trying to sell their products, and they're gonna, I don't, well, they're going to trick you in any way that they can to get it in there, even if you know that sugar itself isn't something that you should be partaking in. So I guess the answer to the question is to just be aware of these like little traps that are out there, including the fact that it's in there, it's hidden, know what they're called. Um, Probably avoid, like they say, the middle aisle of the supermarket and work around the edges, because that's where your most healthy food is. And just if it's in a package, you probably are going to notice that there's going to be something in there that has sugar in it, no doubt about it. And just being aware of that and just taking a second look at it, I think that goes a long way. And that would be my advice, as far as just being the awareness of it lurking in the shadows, and just be very conscious that take the time to to possibly avoid it.
It's so true. And, some of the names, just for the listeners to have a little bit of understanding, we have maltodextrin, we have dextrose, we have turbinado. Like, there's so many different names, but turning that package around and just starting to read it and understanding that it's manufactured. A scientist is sitting in a lab trying to figure out how to make it taste even better for
Yeah.
you to keep buying it. So I love that. That's so important. And what I'm curious about too is, what are the other ways that sugar is affecting our bodies?
Yeah, no, so like the biggest one that happened to me, obviously, and I think most people were interested in seeing that particular, it was the weight loss, right? And it's inverse, with the weight gain that you do have. But it's linked to so many different things. Obviously, your teeth, right? Your skin, your hair, unfortunately, it has incredible brain like influence, right? So you're talking about people who lack energy, and you think like sugar actually is funny, because you sometimes people think that they get a little bit pep in their step because the sugar's giving you some energy. Most research is coming out now that that's not the case, and it's something almost like it may be a quick hit like for a second, but it has like deleterious elements to it too, where it's linked to like Alzheimer's disease, dementia. They're talking about some of these things as type 3 diabetes now with the brain health. So there's like a big rabbit hole that people are really understanding. Like I just mentioned, diabetes and all these other issues that are linked to over consumption of sugar. And it's not a benign substance where people just can have unlimited amounts of it. If once you start going down that rabbit hole and start understanding where it's linked throughout the body, it gets really crazy. And it's like, you would not. It was funny. We had a guy on the show, and he said, like, he thinks in the future we're gonna be mortified that we actually gave this to kids as like a reward. Like, it's that bad. And I'm not saying that you can't have it. I hate to be that guy to sound like I'm doing. I partake of special occasions, but it is clearly not something that at any point in human history humans have consumed the amount of sugar that we do today. It's just not happening. So you could that's really what it is. We just have to be mindful. It's not like we can never have it. It's just specifically we have to understand that we are really, really overdoing it. We're seeing the health effects out there to this day.
Absolutely. I think I looked up a statistic where the average American is having about 135 grams per day.
Yeah.
And we're supposed to have at most maybe 25 to 30 grams per day of
Right.
added sugar. And that's added sugar. So we find it in spaghetti sauce, salad dressings. It shows up everywhere. I looked at a bag of my 18-year-old's chips, and they actually had the word maltodextrin in potato chips. And
Yeah.
again, just trying to get that flavor that somebody is addicted to. And once you're aware, I love how you talked about the awareness, because once you're aware, it's so much easier, because then you can have a process in your brain where maybe you're slowing it down. And I'm curious, because you just said something about having it once in a while. So what if your kids are having a birthday party, or you're going out on date night, or there's something special going on? Do you ever partake? And then if you do, how do you get yourself right back on track the next day?
Oh, that's a great question. I do partake. And I'm able to get back just because it wasn't as good as it used to be, right? It's good. I don't have to steal my partner Lori Shemick's idea of this concept, right? She's always says she has like this 3-bite rule. I don't know if you've stumbled across that, right? Where the first bite is out of this world, and then the second bite is, yeah, it's pretty good, and the third bite is like, okay, I could, this all right, you know. So I kind of again, because of the taste bud thing, and I got over this like all or nothing thing. I used to be able to, okay, if I ate one bite of the cake, I can eat the cake. You know, if I have one slice, I can eat the whole cake. You know, so I'm very much all or nothing dude when it comes to that. But that's changed. Again, part of it is awareness, and part of it is not enjoying it as much as I remember, and just having the ability to say, okay, that I'm good with just having it today because of it specifically. It's a special occasion, and I don't need it on a random Monday afternoon because I was a little sad at work or something. Like, you know, like I'm kind of past that, you know. And I know that might be something that sounds a little bit like just because someone has evolved past it. But I think, again, with the taste buds change and the awareness, and it's just not as enjoyable as it used to be, which is a foreign concept for someone struggling right in that moment. But it's definitely something that's my approach, at least at this point, and how I've not been able to just go back and just be a full-time daily sugar eater.
That's really powerful for people who are in it to understand your process. And I appreciate you taking everyone through the whole process and understanding that not everyone is there yet. And as an intuitive eating coach, which we've talked about on your podcast, that it's not about being able to eat donuts all day, every day, if that's what you feel like. It's really listening and slowing down and being aware. And once you do start to change the habits, like you said, it doesn't taste the same when you come back to it. But that 3-bite rule is very powerful, because we do know that after that third bite, we start living off the memory of the first bite. We really live off of the dopamine hit, the memory of that first bite, and becomes
Yeah.
mindless after that. And we have similar personalities. I am definitely an all or nothing. If I taste it, I want it. I'm not a one Girl Scout cookie girl. It's going to be a sleeve, if I'm going to get into
Yep.
it. So the awareness is really important. And when you slow it down and you actually enjoy it instead of going overboard where you're just eating it for, like you said, because you're sad, and being aware of those emotions, being aware of the taste. Because my goal for everyone on this podcast, if you are going to have it, I want you to enjoy it and for it to not affect your health.
Yeah.
And I love the way that you have said that. And I appreciate that you have brought up kind of your way of doing it. But I also would love to know, how do you feel, for example, about fruit? Because there's a whole thing online. We hear people talking about fruit being good or bad based on, of course, whatever diet plan is being marketed at that time. What are your thoughts about fruit going through this process?
Yeah, it's interesting. I've had a spectrum about fruit. I think in the beginning, um, I avoided it for a variety of reasons because I was kind of following that paleo lifestyle going back, say, 15 years ago, and they were pretty much just trying not to have any fruit, just low carb it out. I think that there is a place to pause it, right? Especially if you're struggling with sugar addiction. Like the way I would have done it, like young me, I was like, okay, I won't eat the Skittles and the ice cream anymore. I'll just eat 50 bananas. And it would be the equivalent of, it's not like, yeah, of course the banana has more fiber and all that stuff, but the sugar content I was still chasing. So I would say that my position is you're going to come to a point where, you know what, you can have fruit, it's not going to be that thing that, oh, okay, I'm just going to eat, like I said, 50 bananas instead of the Dunkin' Donuts or coffee with 3 sugars. And I think that I'm gaining in my health. Sugar, in essence, is sugar, but your body will adjust to be able to tolerate it a little bit more, and you're again not going to need it. So I don't think anybody can anybody can debate it, but I think this out there in that context that you just have to be able to understand, am I substituting this just like out of it's almost a disguise, right? Like at the end of the day, it is still, you're going to be having 400 grams of sugar in that day if you eat that much fruit. And again, at some point you're eating the fruit and it's not going to be something that you're going to overindulge in. You'll have it and it's not a big deal. And that's the other thing too. We talked about taste buds, but also like just our body's ability to process the sugar. When you're a sugar addict like I was, where my insulin was spiking all over the place, where then eventually your body levels out and it understands how to be more sensitive to insulin spikes and such. Then when you have a sugar, which is, piece of fruit, which has fiber and some things that stop that spike, coupled with the fact that you're becoming more sensitive to it, then you're okay. So I'm not a person who says never eat fruit. I think that it's a part of this balance of just whether or not you're overdoing it or not. And, it's also just monitor how you feel. So it's been a long, I think, journey for me to actually be in that, because I was, again, very obsessive about sticking to certain plans and such, but I'm very much more liberal in like just being able to handle it on a regular basis if I had to.
That's great, because there is that transition where just getting it out for some people is really important, just getting the taste out even. And then as we evolve and we're more aware, we can add it in. And we both have had Melissa Slemp on our podcast, and she talks about blood sugar. And you mentioned something really important about combining. And she talks about the balanced plate and learning to combine that fruit with things so that it does not affect our blood sugar the same way, doesn't affect our taste buds the same way. So that's really powerful. I appreciate you talking about this. And one question that I ask all of my clients, all of my guests at the end of the podcast is I talk about nourishing your entire life. It's not just about food and exercise. If you could give 3 tips that could have to do with sugar or not to the listeners of things that would really enhance their life if they did them, big or small, what would those 3 tips be?
Ooh, oh, that's a good one. Let me think about this. If the first one, obviously, just be mindful of your sugar, right? I know that obviously sleep is a huge topic now. People are really getting into the understanding of how important it is, and how, again, almost like how we were talking about, like the exercise culture, where we just think we'll just double down on the efforts to work out more and cut back and let more and more calories. We all actually talk about having the ability to sleep less. That's like a badge of honor too, right? Which is stupid, right?
Agree.
It's another thing that is like, wow, all this advice we're getting is like, we think, again, running into walls are just cool. Like, sleep is just something that I know I have struggles. I have a lot of guilt around sleep. Like, if I'm not up at the crack of dawn, no matter what time I went to bed, I feel kind of bad. But that's something that I think that a lot of people, like, as a nugget, should be more mindful. Get sleep. Don't feel guilty about it. Your body needs rest. It wouldn't be doing all that unless it's asking for it. So just chill out with the sleep criticism of yourself with that. And I think this one, I don't know if it could get a little deep down a rabbit hole. I'd be welcome to share this in more content at a later date if you ever want to do this show. I did this one with Tansy Rogers as well. It's just take control of your own health, be your own health advocate, right? So you do know when there's something wrong. I've gone to doctors many times where it's like, I know there's something wrong, and they just basically dismiss me. Oh, it's okay. It's probably nothing, and go home. And I would say, yes, thank God. Thank you for telling me there's nothing wrong with me, and just go about my business. They never gave me a scan. They never gave me any blood work. They never made me take a urine test, nothing. So I just kind of went there, got a validation that I wanted to hear news that I definitely didn't necessarily want to hear, right? So I say this because, and how much time we have for time? I could try to shove this story in as quickly as
We're
possible.
good. Please tell it.
Okay, so um, it's a story that I wish had a different outcome, but my sister, when she was in her 30s, had a very, 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 very bad cough. She had at the time 3 children. Obviously, with the 3 children, she was sleeping probably not as much as she should have. She was not eating well, but this cough was really, really bad. And she kept going to the doctor. You're probably a little overweight. Maybe you need a vacation. Here's some cough syrup, this, that, the other. They were just very dismissive. And she knew there was something wrong. Everyone knew there was kind of something wrong. This kind of went on for a year. Never went and got like a second opinion or anything. Just kind of all right, you're telling me I'm good. Never ran scans, nothing. Until we're like, listen, you have to get a second opinion on this. They found out as soon as she went to the next doctor, she had stage 4 lung cancer.
Wow.
And we're like, this is a year. This person is telling her, don't worry about it. And now with the modern medicine that you have, you could get ahead of these things. You could be okay, a lot of the time. And that was not the outcome here. Like, it was, you just be mindful, like, insist. Most people who are going to the doctor, obviously, probably have insurance. It's not going to be a big deal to ask for one test or the other. Just be on top of it. And then at that point, maybe things can change, and just get ahead of it. Just, your body, and don't let anybody tell you that there's nothing wrong when you really know. And I mean, Kim, how many times have you experienced things in your life where it's like, I just don't feel right, or this is bothering me? What is what is this? Going to the doctor, and it's like, no, nothing. You're young, don't worry about it. You're fine. It'll pass, And unfortunately, that's where she was. She passed away after fighting for 6 years with it. And that was just the fight. She should not have survived 6 years being diagnosed at that stage 4 at that point. But it was always something like, wow, if she was able to write a book, that would have been her message. Like, she was like, listen, don't have any loyalty to any one doctor, get second, third opinions, find what's wrong, right? And that's in everything. And it's just like in your diet, your exercise program, you can be everything you actually want to be in a healthy way. Just go out there and find it. It's there, and on the other end of that is health, is wellness, it's well-being and all that kind of stuff. So I hate to end the show on like the sadder note, but I think that it's important. And that's always, I try to sneak that in as much as I can to just say, hey, people, just, what's best for you, and don't let anybody else tell you.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry about your sister. And I'm really glad you shared that, because being your own advocate is so important, because you do know your body. And that's what I think people mistake. They outsource their health so much to everyone else, when we are the absolute experts on the feelings and knowing that things are not okay. And I think that's probably one of the best tips when I've asked so far. And I appreciate that. And I also am going to go back to the sleep for just a second, which is pretty funny because we're recording at 7 a.m. because both of us are always so busy. But it's sleep that keeps things going and resetting the body every single day. We have to optimize those hormones and wash that brain every single day and recover. So thank you. And the sugar. Omar, I'm so thankful that you were on the show, and I want people to be able to find you. So if you could share where everyone can find you, and also about your 2 amazing podcasts.
Oh, great. Thank you so much for allowing me to share. I'm really looking forward to hearing from your audience. Yeah, if anything that I can help them with, and anything in the health coach space, podcast space, let me know. I'd love to serve your audience. So the easiest place to find me is omarcumberbatch.com. All my social media links are in that particular website. My 2 podcasts are This Podcast Burns Fat, which you've been on and you were amazing. And I think the best intuitive eater guest that we had, because you just did not stick with that portion of it. You're very realistic. I found, and Lori as well, she was very, very happy when you came on. And I have the Health Coach Academy, which you have not been on yet, but you are going to be on soon. And I'm looking forward to that. And that's basically where you can find me. Those are my 2 stops, and love for your audience to come visit.
That would be great. And also, when you go to Omar's website, you can actually get a freebie about sugar and how to stop sugar. And I've actually downloaded it, by the way, because I think it's amazing. And if you want to start a podcast like this one or like Omar's, we also will have a special link in my show notes, because this podcast is actually thanks to Omar. He has a wonderful course that taught me how to do it. So we'll make sure that's out there. Thank you so much, Omar. I appreciate you being here and sharing all your valuable information.
Oh, thanks for having me.
And thank you to the listeners. Please make sure you nourish your entire life and give yourself grace today. I really appreciate you being here. If you resonated with this podcast, it would mean a lot to me if you'd be willing to follow or subscribe to the Emotional Eats podcast. Then you'll never miss an episode. Just go to the Emotional Eats show page on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts, and tap the plus sign in the upper right-hand corner and click on it. While you're there, if you'd be willing to give me a 5-star rating and review, I would be so grateful. If you'd like to take a screenshot and share it on Instagram, just tag me at Kim Hines Health. I would love to hear your thoughts and let me know how I can support you. You can always DM me on Instagram, again, at Kim Hines Health. And just remember to nourish your life and give yourself grace today.